22, you're turning 23, and you have already become the co-founder of Dora, and you have appeared on places such as the Finnish version of Shark Tank. Now, the one thing that I wanted to start off first is why why go into the direction of trying to help dogs?
That's a great question. And actually, we initially started with a completely different idea, focusing on diabetes in humans. But from that idea, we then later on pivoted to diabetes in dogs. But then we quickly realized that it's not such a big market for us. So we pivoted into all canine wellness. And here we are today. But I've definitely always had a passion for entrepreneurship and think that startups can definitely make a huge impact on the world and make things just a little bit easier for both humans and pets in this case then. And when I was younger, I always binge watched Shark Tank. So this is quite like a full circle moment now going into Shark Tank myself. Now we shot the episode 1 month ago and that's coming out now in February or March. But I've always had this drive to actually make an impact and just make the world a little bit of a better place.
That's very cool. And of course, coming from such a young person, especially, nowadays in today's world, it kind of seems that, younger generations are sort of taking a different path sometimes in terms of pursuing things that are difficult. Now, whenever you decided to go into entrepreneurship, what were the initial challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a huge amount of challenges for sure throughout this whole entrepreneurial journey, although it hasn't been going on for such a long time. But initially when we started out, I was the youngest person in the team by far. And I mean, we were, I would say, 3 or 4 co-founders in the beginning, and I was entitled the role of the CEO. And I really challenged, or it was super challenging actually to take on that role. And, although I had been teaching at an upper secondary school already for some time, but I mean, it's definitely different to, manage a classroom of maybe 16 to 18-year-olds and now working with co-founders that are 10 plus years my
Wow.
age, of course. That was really challenging in the beginning, and I must say that I was not a great leader for sure, but I don't think anyone, is born into the role of a leader. I think that's something that you just have to train yourself on, and through experience, you get more insights and become the best leader possible. Absolutely. So that was definitely the first challenge for me. But then, of course, getting into funding or funding rounds and so on, I mean, it's not been an easy journey to say the least, but I mean, we're pushing through and taking small steps at a time. Absolutely.
Well, that's super interesting. I mean, from the leadership perspective, let's say prior Dora and prior, taking on this role, did you see yourself as a leader?
I always wanted to see myself as a leader, but I truly was not a great leader for sure. But
Yeah.
I've always been interested in trying new things. And I mean, I think you can get used to anything for sure
Yeah.
if you really put your time and effort. So, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think when it comes down to leadership roles, there's always different cases, right? One is, somebody can sort of adopt that leadership role. But I think to me, it kind of stands out even more when a group of people sort of see that in you and sort of decide collectively to start following you, and to sort of assign you that role. But hey, we think that this might be the right person to lead us on. I think maybe that's even a little bit more effective because at that particular point, then everybody's kind of already on board that you're going to be their leader, whether you are a good one at first or not. I think they're kind of already open to the possibility that you may be making some mistakes, but it kind of seems that they have already accepted that, right?
Exactly. No, for sure. Absolutely. And I'm really happy that my co-founders really trusted me on this. Absolutely.
How did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, that is really difficult to describe for sure. And, I'm of course really thankful for my co-founders for, putting on the trust on, someone, at such young age in that sense. But I think my background definitely helped with that, because I've experienced a lot of different things. I have a background in chemistry from the University of Helsinki. I've studied architecture and been teaching, and being interested in multiple things. So that definitely helped me on this journey for sure.
Okay, that's kind of quite interesting, and I would like to maybe touch base a little bit on that. So, you're 22 years old, and you have this background in chemistry. How young were you when you started like with these things?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a passion for natural sciences, and well, I initially thought that I would become an architect, but I think there are a lot of similarities in architecture and chemistry. I mean, I see chemistry as architecture on a much, much smaller scale just, and, of course, chemistry, combines a lot of different aspects. I mean, about data, technology, science, and design. And I think that also really helped me on my journey in founding this company, Dora Health, when we are in the health tech or pet tech, veterinary medicine field, however you want to categorize us. But I mean, we're working with an engineering team, science team, and design team. So I see myself sort of as the bridge builder, building these bridges, to all these different departments, because I think that, for example, our engineering team speaks one language and the science team, these researchers, veterinarians, they speak a different language. Not that they would speak French and Spanish, but I mean, they have their different way of communicating. And when I have a background or know a little bit about all of these fields, then it's easier for me to communicate with them and bring us together, because I mean, it's a team. It's definitely a teamwork. I mean, it's not a one-man show, so you have to work really closely with the whole team.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, touching base a little bit on the startup scene, I think we all know how at certain times maybe startups can be quite fragile in terms of you venturing into this adventure, if you want to call it that. There's always the scenario where it might fail, and there might be some fears behind that thing. How do you manage those things? How do you leverage that mindset to sort of keep on pushing forward?
That's a great question. And I think the thing that really keeps me pushing forward is the fact that this company has nothing to do with me personally. I mean, it's a shared mission to actually democratize dog health information and making this dog health data more accessible to people. So it has nothing to do with me in that sense. And of course, I mean, I face challenges every week or even every day, but I mean, working closely with the team really helps with that. And, of course, we still don't know if this will become anything, but I mean, it's the small victories that really push us forward. Of course, there are a lot of losses here and there, but I mean, I think it's really important to stay focused on those small victories at least.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and that's great. I suppose there's a lot of lessons learned, as you are going through those challenges. It's kind of funny. Like, I've heard somewhere that all the learning that you have, you actually don't get it from winning, but you actually get it from losing. So, in a way, maybe the more you lose, the more you learn, and that's just gonna give you a pathway into how you want to go next, or what is the direction that you want to take. Now, obviously,
Mm.
having a startup involves a lot of time and definitely a lot of effort. Talk to me a little bit about how do you balance all these things. Of course, I'm a big proponent, maybe because I'm a little bit old school, but I have no problem saying that I really value hard work and putting in hours. Whenever it's something that you truly love, and whenever it's something that you feel has a deeper purpose than just work, then you don't mind putting in those hours. But tell me about yourself. I mean, how do you manage that balance, or if there even is a balance?
Yeah, I mean, I really wish that I would have an easy answer to that. Because of course, working as a startup founder, I mean, you are constantly thinking about what you should do, what you're not doing. And I mean, it feels like my mind is already focused on the startup, even though I'm doing something completely different. But like you said, I think it's all about the balance and, balancing your life with, for example, different types of activities, meeting your team often, and, putting small goals for you on the way. Because, of course, our goals are really ambitious. And, of course, we would like to turn this into a bigger business in that sense. But I mean, I think it's good to be structured and really put small goals for you. I mean, it could be just to accomplish a few small things during the week, because those really add up and then they become something big. But I mean, it is definitely challenging at some times to actually manage with everything. So I think it's really important to focus on your sleep and get some exercise as well. Although, I mean, this is quite a cliche answer in that sense, but I mean, it is, of course, all about a balance.
Yeah, that is true. And definitely, I'm this firm believer that, you know, the more you subject yourself to doing hard things, you know, they kind of become sort of natural. So then as more challenges are coming through, you kind of already know how to handle those things. Whereas if you never subject yourself to anything difficult, whenever something difficult comes, it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's like the whole world is crashing down on you. Uh, Talk to me a little bit about, you know, obviously, you grow up in a certain way and you have your friends and you have people that are close to you. And from experience as well, it kind of seems like whenever you take on this particular role, this particular path, you kind of start going in this direction, and perhaps some of your friends may not be going in that same direction. And over time, you kind of like leave people behind. Have you had it? Have you had to experience those things where maybe you were very close to a group of friends, but because the path that your life is taking you into a different direction, and maybe now you're surrounding yourself with other kind of people. How has that played for you?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, the answer is yes to many of those claims, because there are people that I've had to leave back because I pursued this journey. But I mean, of course, there are also a ton of different people that I met throughout the journey as well. And I think it's really important to position yourself in an environment that really inspires you and keeps you moving forward, because staying in that old environment can really have a negative impact on you, both mentally and in other ways as well, of course. So it's definitely really about adapting into different environments and meeting new people and discovering things that you might not have thought about, because I think everyone has a story and you can definitely learn a lot from everyone, for sure. But unfortunately, yes, there are occasions when some relationships or connections don't work out and you just have to leave them behind.
Yeah. So when did you come up with that conclusion? I mean, I suppose, I don't know, it kind of seems sometimes whenever you have this big idea and then you start sharing it, with your friends, with the world, there might be times whenever, they might have an opinion about it, like, hey, what if it doesn't work out? Or, it's very hard, now this market, the interest rates are very high, and so forth and so on. So, it kind of seems sometimes like people will put on to you the ceilings that they put to themselves. So when did you come with that realization that, okay, this is not the place where I want to be? I need to kind of slowly or abruptly detach myself from those people.
I've always wanted to challenge myself and really change in many ways, because of course, when you are founding a company, then no one will believe you. I mean, even my parents or my sister would believe me in, what I'm doing. So, I mean, it is really challenging in the beginning, because of course, as the founder, you have to believe in yourself, from the really beginning, and think to yourself that you can actually do this, although no one's going to believe you. Of course, I mean, even putting, let's say, something up on social media about what you are doing can feel a little bit stressful in the beginning, because people are just going to think that, okay, now he's trying out something and, that's not going to work. But I mean, you still need to keep pushing. And, at the end of the day, I mean, this is just a small, silly little world that we live in. And, we just have a certain amount of time on this planet. So, I mean, I don't think you should take things too seriously, and you shouldn't be afraid to fail in that sense.
Yeah. I think maybe that's definitely great advice for other young people who are maybe thinking about pursuing their dream, pursuing something, but there's always that fear of, what are people going to think about it? What are people going to say? I'm trying to do something completely crazy. Are they going to criticize me? Are they going to accept it? That's always very interesting how life sort of starts playing out whenever you start sort of challenging yourself and sort of pushing yourself for something different that perhaps wasn't present in the current circle where you were, where you were at that moment. You know,
Mm,
obviously, once again, of course, I like making emphasis on the fact that you're very young because, in my opinion, is very admirable. The fact that you're taking on these kinds of responsibilities at such a young age, and there's no telling, the kind of person that you will become 5, 10, 15 years from now. And I think that's amazing. Now, on that same note, of course, you're building a company, you have your product, you have all these great ideas. Now, you have to spend a lot of time, obviously, talking to people that have money, trying to get their money. So, what are some of the first reactions that you get whenever you are talking to a possible investor?
absolutely. I mean, the answer that I got many times, I mean, just a few months ago as well, is that, we are at such an early stage. And, because I feel like investors today expect you to already have, for example, customers, that you have a working prototype and all these things. Because before the war in Ukraine, you could basically get an investment with just a pitch deck and an idea, a vision, a dream, essentially. But now investors definitely seek much more. But at the end of the day, they also look highly on the team because, even if the MVP or prototype is shit, I mean, you can still improve on that, but you can't really improve on the team that much. The team is, of course, definitely always the core, in the whole business idea. But in the beginning, definitely, it was challenging with investors, when we were just having a dream, a vision, But now, since we've got a lot further and we've been lucky with funding, then
That's
it's been
great.
at least a little bit easier in that sense. But of course, I mean, we are soon raising our next funding round. So, I mean, I can't speak on that yet. I mean, how it's going to go, of course. Also, I mean, touching base on, my age and talking to investors, I sometimes got the question also that how old are you? And then I needed to think about that a little bit, that what should I answer? Should I add a few years on top of my actual age, that like, okay, maybe I can, go by 26-year-old or something. I mean, even though I have quite a baby face, but I mean, I could try,
Yeah,
to make
yeah,
them less panic.
yeah. Definitely, I can see
Yes,
that
yes.
happening. And of course, we all sort of have this bias, about the people that we meet, especially, I guess the older people are, sometimes those biases are always sort of aligned to their age, and of course, especially when there's like a belief that, that younger people are not the same as how it used to be, and then all these things. But of course, there's always those which I see as well. So, I'm always very inspired to see sometimes younger people than even me sort of, accomplishing these amazing things. It's like, well, it's not entirely true. There's always a group of people that are actually pushing the boundaries and pushing themselves. Now, on the topic that, before the Ukraine war, it was very easy to get funding for various projects. But on that same note, I mean, we know that there's sort of a like over regulation in Europe in terms of innovation. How do you see that playing out? I mean, I saw on LinkedIn somewhere this meme where it was showing, I guess it was a comparison of the US versus Europe. And they were saying, like, okay, in the US, Elon Musk is catching supermassive rockets with a tower. Whereas in Europe, we're very proud of that thing that is in the plastic bottles that the lid doesn't fall off anymore. And there was this conversation about, well, obviously, there's, the regulations in the US are different. They're a lot less, so that allows for a lot more innovation to happen. Whereas in Europe, it seems that there is this like never ending bureaucracy where innovation kind of gets shut down due to the amount of regulations and, of course, higher taxes. How do you, how do you see yourself into playing a role in wanting to innovate, but there's those hurdles of regulations in Europe?
That's a really, really tricky topic for sure, because I mean, innovation really revolves in taking different risks, of course. And well, we also see that a lot of funding goes into perhaps a bit more research-based projects. Of course, our project is also highly research-based, but also as we are in the pet tech field, some people might even think that, animal health is not as important as human health, for example. So I've also faced a lot of challenges in that sense, because a lot of health tech investors might not even be interested in pet tech. Although, of course, it's a really, really important sector that also, needs a lot of funding and a lot of research. But that is definitely a consistent challenge, also working with different regulations and so on. Always need to work on different routes and ways. And, it usually slows down the process, of course, of innovation. And that's not a great thing. So, in that sense, I'm not really happy with, the current situation, but I hope to see a change in the near future, definitely.
Yeah, I agree as well, and it's quite evident. I don't know. What do you think of the fact, like something that I've been looking into is it kind of seems like, of course, a lot of companies in Europe kind of get funding whenever they're trying to solve like a problem that they consider a problem, like healthcare or something that has to do with sustainability or climate change or those kinds of things. Whereas it kind of seems to me that, and I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that on the west side of the world, the innovation kind of goes towards good ideas that can make money. If you have a good product, and here's the money. Do anything that you have to do so that you can thrive as a company. Whereas in Europe, even if the idea is great, but if it's not solving a problem, it kind of seems like people are a bit hesitant to maybe invest in those companies. Whenever you go to those events, like the one that where I saw you at Platform 6, where people are sort of posting different ideas or pitching different ideas, I do understand, yes, the fact that we need to do a lot more work to, improve the sustainability aspect of companies. But at the same time, I think we might be losing some opportunities when it comes down to great products and great ideas. I mean, if I think of your product, for example, who doesn't love dogs? Finland, everybody has dogs. Well, most people have dogs. And if somebody is willing to buy like a cute little hat or like a fluffy little vest for their dog, most likely they're going to purchase a product that's going to give them insights about the health of their dog. We do it to ourselves. And it kind of seems that when it comes down to taking care of whether it's people that is not us or animals, we kind of go a little bit farther than, like, to me, it kind of seems that we take care more of people or dogs than sometimes we do of ourselves. So whenever I was hearing you pitch about the idea, like, to me, I think it's a great idea. I mean, especially if you think about the American market, where they just love to buy shit, a lot of times useless, but something like this that can give them like actually insights about their dog, about the health of their dog. I really saw like a lot of potential, and that's why like I went up to you and I told you, hey, that's a great idea. I really like it, and I can't wait to see it popping up in the markets, because I think there's a lot of uses to it. Whether it's police dogs, whether it's dogs that are in the armed forces or service dogs, or just somebody who deeply cares about their pet. It's something that could be used for that. So yeah,
absolutely, yeah, that's great to hear as well.
Yeah. Now, with all this journey that you have had, what are some of the things that you have discovered about yourself that maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago you never thought you would see in yourself?
Yeah, I was really the shy kid as well. And I even brought my mom to the dentist or, the hairdresser when I was younger. So, I could have never imagined that, well, I would, for example, step on Shark Tank or do all these kinds of things, at this age. So, that's definitely something that's even surprised me in many ways. But I've always had this passion and, I knew that I would do it at some point. But that point came perhaps a little bit earlier than expected. But I don't think there is a right time to do something, because people always come up with excuses and say that, oh, I can't, start this idea or start with this now. I'm so focused on A, B, and C. But there's never the right moment. And I think you really need to just go for it, and then see what could happen, because, of course, many startups, like you said, fail. But I think it's important to at least give it a shot and, build something quickly and if you fail, then you fail, and then you start with something different. And, the same thing applies to us, of course. I mean, that's, if we can't make this happen, then, I'll go on and do something else. So, I mean, this is one project among many other projects in life in that sense. Absolutely.
Is there something else that you have in mind that you would like to work on in the future?
I would like to do a PhD at some point in life for sure. But I mean, whether that's in, let's say, 10 years or more or less, I mean, that I don't know. But I mean, there's still a lot to, discover and to do for sure.
Yeah, you have plenty of time for that. You definitely do. Now, when everything was going on, were you ever afraid?
Absolutely. That's definitely a big, big yes for sure. But, if you're scared to do it, then I think you should do it. I mean, has also been kind of my motto, that like, you should always try different things. And, I mean, it's not that serious at the end of the day. And, so I would also want to encourage, people to just really, you know, think outside the box and put themselves outside of the box. I mean, and really, try things that they've never tried before.
Yeah. Is this sort of mindset or attitude, is it self-made, or has somebody inspired you? Did you have somebody in your family that was always pushing you forward, or where does this come from?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, but I mean, think my parents have always put quite, or been quite strict with me and, said that, I can do better. And, if I do something, win, let's say, I used to run track and compete in that. And my parents were, not that happy if I, came second place or something. I mean, they really pushed me in that sense. And also a lot of my inspiration comes also from my grandfather, who unfortunately passed away when I was quite young, but
Sorry to
he
hear that.
always said to me that, thank you. So he always said that small losses are big victories in the end, and I couldn't agree more with that for sure.
Wow, very well said. Yeah, that's that's quite interesting. Definitely, I guess how we see the world and how we approach the world definitely has a lot to do with how we are influenced, by our family or by people that are close to us. And it makes me happy to hear, such a story like yours, the fact that you have had, supportive parents, but not just supportive, but also sort of pushing yourself.
Mm,
That, that's one topic that I'm also like super interested about, given that I'm a parent as well, and
absolutely.
of course, at some level you don't want your kids to go through discomfort, but on the other hand, you just know how necessary it is for the kid to go through some challenges, go through some hiccups, so that you can see what that kid is made of. It's very cool to
Mm,
see that you had that opportunity as well, and obviously you have a background in sports, so you have that competitive advantage. Even though you may have
mm.
been shy, like you mentioned, I guess, would it be fair to say that the competitive advantage or the competitive nature in you sort of made you come out of that shy bubble that you were in at some point, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I definitely agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, you talked about your grandparents, about your grandfather and your parents. Has it been something generational where, you know, I suppose if we think back about, Finnish people, back in the days, there's this background of the whole concept of sisu, the
Mm.
how would you explain that to somebody who is listening that is not from Finland? And obviously, I suppose you have that in you, right? The whole sisu thing. So how would you explain it to somebody that is not from Finland and who might be listening to this and say, what the hell are they talking about? What is sisu?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about having this inner burn or passion inside of you. And although many Finnish people might seem quite shy in many occasions, for sure, I mean, we still have this burning desire to do good things and really to keep pushing forward, even though some things might not work out for us, from the beginning or even the end. But I mean, we always really want to give it our best shot and keep pushing forward even though there are a lot of obstacles in the way.
Okay, yeah, great. So I want to go back a little bit to the Finnish version of Shark Tank. Is that something that you can talk about or not yet?
Yeah, it's coming out in February, and I can't talk about the results yet, but a little bit for sure.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about how that invitation came, or like how does one land in?
Yeah, I just heard, I think, on LinkedIn that you could apply to this Finnish Shark Tank. And then I immediately thought that, I mean, I have to do this now because although I had a lot of second thoughts in me thinking that we are still at such an early stage and these investors don't invest in, you know, products that are not out in the market even. So I most definitely had these second thoughts. And I've grown up in Finland, but Swedish is my native language. So, I was also thinking that I might struggle, with my Finnish even on the show and so on. So I had ton of doubts, but I still thought to myself that, I mean, this is the time to do it because I'm not even sure if this show will be recorded this year, for example. I mean, is it gonna end now on this season? So I thought to myself that this is the time. I mean, if I want to do this, I have to do it now. And of course, when I've been a huge fan of the show for such a long time, then, it felt, quite incredible, to actually step on the show myself. And I always used to judge, for example, different contestants and think that, well, that person doesn't know their numbers too well or so on. And then I'm, stepping on the show and thinking that, do I know the numbers now? Now I'm in the position. So it definitely took a lot of courage to actually step on there for
I'm
sure.
sure, I'm sure. Wow, I mean that's quite impressive. So how does it work? So let's say there's a ad or something about a Shark Tank. So do you just like apply there? Is there like some kind of screening test, or is there some kind of evaluation of the product that you are going to be presenting? Like how does that work? Like does everybody get
Yeah,
to
it all
pitch to
started.
them, or do they get to
Yeah,
pick whose idea they want to listen to?
it all started with an application. You had to answer just a few questions and send a video as well. And then a few weeks later, I think I got a call that they would want to have a meeting with me. And then we had our call or meeting and we discussed about our product, about me, about my team and our vision. And then a few weeks later, when I was in Copenhagen, I was just pitching at a different event there. I got a call saying that we would love to see you on the show. And, that was, of course, an incredible moment. Absolutely. But I mean, we had a few steps here and I was not sure if, we were ever going to make it. I mean, I thought that I might not even get into the interview in the first place. So I was definitely quite shocked, but in a good way, for sure, of course. But I mean, I'm really happy that I actually got this opportunity. I'm really grateful for it, for sure.
It's cool. That's very cool. So I suppose, you going through these things and sort of seeing that people are receptive to hearing your idea, I suppose like those are the little things that sort of keep you going, right? I mean, kind of give you hope that, okay, there's people interested in this idea. People want to hear about it. So I really think I might be onto something.
Totally, for sure. And I think, about a year ago when I posted my first video on social media about this, it kind of blew up on TikTok, for example, and I suddenly got a lot of reactions and people saying that I want to purchase that now. And, that really, I think was one of the first things that, really gave me confidence in the idea and the business itself.
Cool. Can you talk a little bit more about the actual product itself? Like, how is it that is able to measure those things in dogs? Can you explain it a little bit further?
Absolutely. So we're developing a non-invasive device that's attachable to the dog's collar, and this device actually communicates with a microchip that works in a similar way as an ID chip. So it's actually implanted under the skin of the dog. So we can get, for example, cortisol measurements, we can get heart rate, body temperature from this chip that then communicates with this non-invasive wearable device that also works on itself or on its own, and that one that then measures, for example, activity and there's a GPS and a lot of cool features for sure. So I mean, it's a combined system that we're developing now.
That sounds very cool. I mean, and I mean, by what time do you sort of anticipate that this product would be out on the market?
I would hope that we would get this non-invasive device already out in the market at the end of this year. But with this implant, there's of course a lot of R&D that has to be made before we can actually launch that. But I'm definitely quite ambitious, and I mean, I hope to get that around next year for sure.
Okay, cool. So is it going to be like the implant gets put into the dog and then you have like some kind of app, or is it like a separate device where you see all these things? How?
Exactly so. Both the implant and this non-invasive device communicate with our mobile app then, where you can essentially see all your dog's health data, much like this Rings app, Aura's app, for example.
Yeah.
And funny about Aura is also that we are now partnering up with the company that brought the Aura Ring to mass market. So
Wow.
that's a
Wow,
huge
congrats.
achievement for us as well. Thank you.
That's very good. That's very good. I mean, so, all these signs just kind of point, that you're going into the right direction. So it's very exciting to see. I have a little dog, so that's also another reason why it was kind of interesting to me. The other dog that we had, she passed away 2 years ago, and of course because of health issues. So it's all right. So I was like, what if there was a way, besides going to the vet, that would give us some ideas as to, what is the current state of the dog. So I think it's very cool. I mean, and you get attached to your pet so crazily that you wish you could do more for them. So this is something that is very exciting to see how it's going to develop and what is going, or when it's going to come up. Yeah. Is there other applications for this kind of technology for dogs, or is it just going to be merely just tracking their insights or their vitals and things like that? Like, is there potential for more using that device?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're also looking into proactive care and also enabling early detection of different health issues in dogs. So we, of course, don't want to make every pet parent a biohacker in that sense that they would track every single heartbeat of their dog, but just to get a little bit more information about their dog's overall health. And we are also, of course, working closely with veterinarians and veterinary clinics because we want this to actually be something that professionals could use and benefit from. We don't want this to be just a silly toy that some people will use for 1 month and then throw away. Because of course we also care about sustainability in that sense too, that we want to make products that last and that people would actually benefit from, and not just create something that, you try once and throw away.
Yeah.
And of
Yes.
course, I mean, there are a lot of different ways we could continue from, this also pivoting into, for example, horses or cats in the future. But right now, we're, of course, mainly focusing on dogs.
Yeah, that's very cool. How big is your team now at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, my team keeps changing. I mean, people are, of course, in different life situations, come and go in that sense. And sometimes I have to lay people off. So I would say that in the core team, we are 3 people. But then we're, of course, working closely with this product development team in northern Finland, in Oulu, which is a bit bigger than, and we have a lot of partners that we work together with. So it's difficult, for me to even give, a number in that sense. But I mean, I would say that we are around 10 people at the moment that are focused on the project.
Cool. So you just mentioned something, there's been times where you had to lay off people. The first time that you did it, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the most difficult things that I've, done. And, I'm someone who, really struggles to, give these kinds of news to people. So, I mean, it took a lot of time from me also just to prepare myself to give those news to the people. And, of course, none of these decisions are made in a day. And I mean, it's a decision that's been building up for many months. And of course, I do have my reasons why someone needs to leave. So, I mean, in that sense, it shouldn't be a difficult decision, or it would always be a difficult decision. But I mean, for me, at least, that was definitely one of the hardest things that I've done, for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. Of course, yeah, that's the thing, sometimes whenever you work with people, it's kind of hard to Whenever you're hiring somebody, I suppose, you have a few things. You have the interview, which, it can be completely honesty, or it can be just bullshit, right? So, and then there's the
Mm.
resume, which the same thing, the resume can sort of point one thing out, but then it could be something completely different. I mean, how do you manage those things? I suppose you've had to sort of learn ways to talk to people and sort of, like spot bullshit on the spot, if it's necessary to sort of make the best decisions. But of course, there might be some times when, well, you might have been fooled. How do you develop those things?
For sure. I mean, that is definitely a good point there. And well, thinking about, our early days, how I met my co-founders, we were together on an incubator program working on rather similar ideas, focusing on diabetes. And that's essentially how we connected. And, then I got to see them in person for many times. We had weekly workshops, and then we built a trust for each other. That was definitely a really good way to connect with co-founders. But of course, when you're hiring, it's a completely different setting in that sense that you meet someone, for the first time, have a meeting with them and discuss how they could contribute to the company. I mean, it is a constant challenge. And I mean, I think the only way to actually know if someone, fits in that role is to have some kind of test period, see how they communicate with the rest of the team, see what progress they make, and then after that, make a decision. So I would always have a trial period for people joining the team before actually then evaluating if they can continue working with us or not. And I mean, I get messages almost every single week of people saying that they would want to join our team, which I mean is great, of course, but I mean, we can't obviously keep, bringing people on board in that sense. And I mean, some people even say that they could work without a salary, without equity, without anything, they just want to, contribute to this. But I mean, unfortunately, we can't, involve everyone, although we would want to. And of course, for our products, we work also closely with dog owners who, are eager to test our products. But then, that's a different story, of course. But I mean, it is difficult, to make a decision and to see who would actually be the best fit for the team.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine, especially because, well, you as a co-founder, this company, in a way, it's kind of like your baby. Like, you
Mm.
know, you want it to grow, you want it to be healthy. I mean, I can only imagine. Of course, I've never been in that kind of situation, but I can just, imagine how it could be. And given that you have all these things that they have to worry about, trying to get money, trying to keep the company afloat, and then managing people, that's gotta be quite a toll sometimes on you. So is it, again,
Absolutely.
what's the one thing that perhaps people don't understand sometimes whenever they go to work for a startup? I mean, from my personal experience, when I came to Finland, it was the time whenever I first worked at a startup, and coming, of course, from working with a very large company with over 20,000 employees, it is a lot more structured. There's a lot of things that just kind of run like clockwork. But of course, in the startup world, things are a little bit different. And of course, I did notice that sometimes things kind of go wrong. Sometimes things don't work and they need to get fixed. And it's totally a different environment, startup, whereas working at a already established company. There was definitely a lot of learning to do in terms of the environment. The work culture is a little bit different. But for somebody that might be listening, might be a little bit younger, they're looking for a job, and might be getting opportunities only for startups, what would be the one thing that you could tell those people whenever they're going to go into working with a startup? I mean, what's the one thing that, let's say, CEOs like yourself are sort of for individuals, are looking from individuals whenever they join their company?
That's a great question, and something that I probably don't have a great answer to, or, I can't really give a simple answer to that, at least, because of course I am always looking for experience. But then again, experience is not everything. I mean, of course, a PhD, says something, of course, in that sense. But I mean, I don't have a PhD myself either. So I mean, it's not always about experience. That's what I want to say, because some people, if they know how to do a task and don't have, experience or a background or education in that, I mean, then they could be equally as qualified for the role, so experience is not everything, of course, but I mean, it's all about communication, I would say, and really understanding the rhythm also of a startup. I mean, it's really fast-paced environment. But again, sometimes, things might move really, really slowly. But I mean, you have to be really quick to react on things. And something that some people might struggle with is, to really keep up with this pace. And, some people don't understand that, some things might pop up, in a day, and then you have to react and think about how to continue from there on. So it is, like you said, a really different environment than, the other workspace for sure. But I mean, of course, all startups are different as well. So I mean, it's really about, the adapting skills, I would say, to adapt into a new environment, new people, colleagues that you are working with. So I don't have a simple answer to that. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's really just to push forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's all about, finding people who have the same goals in mind as you do. I suppose if I was in your position, I would like to find somebody who is as driven as I am, that sort of like knows where they want to go as well. And, maybe that's like the easiest thing, but of course it's always hard to find. Now, on the same topic, there's a lot of talk, on social media, on LinkedIn about well-being in a company. And sort of, it seems to me like a lot of individuals are placing a lot of the responsibilities on company leaders or on the company itself to sort of take care of their own well-being. What do you think about that? I mean, I've always wondered those things, as to I kind of have this idea that we are the ones responsible for our well-being, right? And of course, it's always nice if the employer sort of takes some kind of interest in it, but I honestly don't feel it's their responsibility to sort of make sure that we are okay in a way. What I mean, make sure, meaning that they shouldn't be doing 100% of the work to make sure that we're okay. How do you, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, the team is the core thing about a business, and it's really, really important to have also small talks with everyone in the company. And of course, not everyone needs to be in every meeting, and we have all these different departments also inside of our company. But I think it's really important to, focus on the communication and, also being really open to everyone in that sense. And well, I just read, for example, about this one Swedish company, Jerf Avenue, that was led by quite a young female entrepreneur who had her clothing brand. She's quite big on social media, and she's built this image that shows that she's this really, really generous girl, this really super nice and kind-hearted person. And now what people found out is that she's actually been treating her employees really, really poorly. And, Matilda, the founder of the company, has built the brand on, herself. I mean, she is the one representing the company. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they move forward from this scandal. And, I thought that Matilda was, this amazing, kind-hearted person. And then, you find out all these things from the employees. And that, of course, scares me as well, because, I mean, who would want to be in that situation? And I honestly don't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be a tricky one. Of course, definitely mistreating your employees is completely not acceptable, right? But at the same time, I just kind of feel like maybe like us as employees, perhaps have a moral responsibility towards ourselves to, hey, if I'm going through something, I need to seek help. I need to maybe talk to somebody. Hey, I'm kind of going through this thing, and need to take care of it. Whereas instead of just taking everything to work, because I don't know, like if I was working for you, for example, I would honestly feel a bit unfair for me to having to put on my problems onto you. You know, if I think about like an employment agreement, it's like, okay, the employment agreement is that you're going to pay me for the skills that I have or for the task that I'm responsible for within the company, right? Anything outside of that, if you happen to care about me, that's great. That's something that I would value. But then you having to take care of my emotional well-being, I kind of see it as too much. I kind of see it as it's kind of my responsibility because, whether I work for you at the moment or then not anymore, you still have those things and you still have to take care of those things. And, having to carry on those problems from job to job, it's not going to help you or the organization. It's just going to maybe place a little bit more work, or maybe it's going to delay a lot of the work to your other colleagues because you're trying to handle these things that you're going through, but yet we're not taking care of ourselves. Of course, I do see the part
Mm.
where we should be concerned about our employees and sort of like see where they're at, and maybe sort of help them to sort of take the right steps so that they can take care of themselves. To take it farther than that, I don't know. I don't see it very helpful or I just see it that would be a lot of work on the people leading the company.
I mean, it is a really, really difficult topic
Yeah, it is
for
a very
sure.
difficult topic. Yeah, it's a tricky one because, of course, especially nowadays that everything gets sort of portrayed, or everything just sort of gets put out there on social media, and then any little thing that you might say that may come off in the wrong way, even though the intentions might be on the good place, could be misinterpreted. So I suppose from your side, you really have to be very careful how you communicate with your employees, with your team, to sort of avoid those things. How do you manage those things?
Yeah, I mean, a lot, of course, that's a really, tough topic, and a lot of pressure on me in that sense for sure, because, sometimes I might be a bit scared to say some things, but at the same time, being scared of everything, won't get you anywhere. So it is for sure tough to handle. But I mean, of course, leading or working at this company, it's not a one-man show. I would say that we are more or less like a family, at least in the core team. And, we meet regularly over coffee and so on, and, discuss our next tasks and, call each other quite often. So, I mean, I think we have definitely built good trust in the company, which I'm really happy for. Absolutely. But I mean, it is tough. It is tough for
Yeah, I
sure.
can imagine. I mean, that's very cool, to hear from your side that you have been able to sort of build, a family or like a great community within your work. And that's definitely, those are some of the things that people really love about, being part of an organization, when everybody knows where they have to go, everybody's on the same point, and maybe if someone is lagging a little bit, other ones are like help them to bring them up, and it's like an ongoing circle. And I think maybe I don't know, I mean, maybe those are some of the things that could be a bit challenging now, finding a place where you really feel like you belong. And it kind of seems to me like
Mm.
you're definitely building that place. So, you know, besides the successes that you have had so far, would it be fair to say that this is the fact that you have been able to build such a strong community within your work? I mean, how proud does that make you feel?
Well, I mean, I'm of course, really proud of our accomplishments, but I mean, there's still a lot to accomplish. And, in our organization, we have a really close circle, especially with the people that I work really closely with, for example, our chief scientific officer and head of veterinary medicine. But of course, there are also people outside of that circle, but who are also included in the team and are really important, who, you know, might be a bit more distant. And, uh, I'm still, having some challenges, of course, with that. So, I mean, everything is not perfect and will never be, of course. And also, for example, some time ago, a few months ago, we had some people who I thought were a great fit for the team, but then at the end, I don't think that they were. And, because of course, some people might be just after the money as well, in a startup. They think that, okay, this is the way to make money really quickly, although it absolutely isn't. And, there's a lot of bootstrapping, in the beginning, and, you never know if you're going to make it. So you should never join a company, just for the money. But I mean, it's really important that you enjoy the work that you do, of course. And I worked on this countless hours, without taking a salary, for example, even. And, that was tricky in the beginning, definitely. I mean, because I had constantly these thoughts also that should I be doing something else, where I would earn money instead of, building something like this where it's not sure at all if I'll ever make money. So, it is really challenging, and, I'm facing challenges also in the team constantly. So it's not like everything would be perfect, although it might seem like it, for example, on LinkedIn or any other social media platform. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine. How many hours do you work a day?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm thinking about the company, 24/7, also in my sleep, but I mean, so it's difficult to give a direct number for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the only way that you can make it happen, right? I mean,
Mm,
who knows where the company would be if you were only spending 7.5 hours a day, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's very admirable. Max, what would be to kind of put context to this question? Do you know a lot more younger people like yourself that are on this path?
I definitely know a few people, and, they've also been there for me from the very beginning as well. And I think it's really interesting to follow them as well. And they essentially inspire me too, and I hope to inspire them as well.
Well, piggybacking on that, what would be the one piece of advice you would give to other younger people like yourself, that are perhaps, doubting themselves, or it could be something so simple as to pursue a simple dream that you would like to tell them so that they can, you know, achieve something great or at least pursue it? What would be that one thing that you tell them?
Definitely tell them that success does not happen, in one day. I mean, it's a long process. And even if you might not be working directly on something for a long time, I mean, you are still, putting the effort into something and hopefully then accomplishing something great. Or if not, then you at least learn something and make new connections that will help you in the future. But it's definitely important to stay consistent and, keep on doing what you love, because if you don't love what you are doing, I mean, then there's no point in pursuing that for sure.
Brilliant. Well, I think there's no better way to end today's conversation. Everybody, Max Ahonen, where can people keep up with you?
Yeah, they can follow us, for example, on LinkedIn or Instagram at doracolor.com, or look at our website, doracolor.com, and, we are constantly updating those sites.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and...
and then, of course, Shark Tank.
Oh, yeah. So...
Of course, Shark Tank, that's coming up then in February or March. So that's, of course, something to look up for.
Okay. So there's not a date yet established for when that episode is going to be airing?
I think it's going to start in, was it the 19th of February? But then, depending on which episode we are in, so I'm not too sure yet.
Okay, well, that's great. Anyway, I'll go ahead and post a link in the description of your website, of your social media, so that people can sort of find it there as well. But Max, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you and learning, what it is to be a young entrepreneur, the challenges that you have been facing and how you have overcome those things. I think there's a lot of things that people can learn from you, whether they are 20 years old, 30, 40 years old. It doesn't matter. The fact is that you're pursuing your dreams, you're pushing forward, and that's something very inspirational, and I applaud you for it.
Thank you for those kind words, Daniel.
You're very welcome. All right, then. Bye, everybody.